Hi, my name is Rie Thomsen and I'm here to talk to you about my research and the model of career guidance in communities. I've called this presentation Career Guidance in Communities, the Collective Turn. So by the time of the research in Denmark, most career guidance interventions were often organized in the form of individual sessions carried out by a career guidance practitioner using different methodological approaches. And these individual sessions often took part in an office. But at the same time, we know from other research that the ones that are most in need of career guidance often are the ones that are least likely to turn up for career guidance sessions. So with this knowledge, I wanted to understand how career guidance actually come to make meaning and become a relevant practice in people's lives. So you can say that in career guidance, we often think about it as something that is individual and inside a box. So we think in terms of confidentiality, and we think in terms of dialogue, individual dialogues, and that prevents us from seeing the impact that the collective around the career guidance sessions can have on the meaning that people attach to career guidance. But we also see practices that think out of the box. Here is a picture of a career guidance that is delivered through an office in a trailer. So it's a bus that travels to locations where people are. We also think out of the box when we develop and deliver career guidance online and in virtual spaces. And sometimes we think of guidance centers that we place deliberately where people live and work in their daily lives. And here is a picture of career guidance on the shop floor in a factory. And the research that I'll be talking about have two cases. One is a folk high school for young people, and the other case is a factory that produces paint. And for this presentation, I have chosen to include examples from the factory. So I based this presentation on my book on career guidance in community, which is actually my Ph.D. research that took place in 2012. After that, I have been writing several articles about career guidance in communities, one that focuses on non-participation in guidance and how we can understand non-participation as an opportunity for development. I have written about career guidance on the move, where career guidance take place in new places. I have produced together with my two colleagues who have developed the model for career guidance in communities together with me, Rita Buhl and Randi Skovhus. We have produced a collection of cases which has been prepared by Euroguidance Denmark and is available for you online. And finally, I present in the article from 2007, a reflexive model for career guidance in communities, which I will also be presenting in this presentation. So if we jump into the factory to get a little sense of how the collective became visible to me during my field studies, I have a quote here from Paul, who's talking about what happened in the factory when the factory decided to move their production to another country. And all the workers were made redundant, and how they helped each other. So Paul, he says, I have helped loads of my colleagues apply for new jobs, and it's been very rewarding to talk to them about this. We talk about it a lot. Fleming went to an interview the day before yesterday, for instance, and I had a chat with him yesterday. We talk a lot about who will get a new job and who we think will fail to do so. A good deal of the day passes like that. And then I ask, I see, do you help each other with these ideas about where to look? And Paul replies, to some extent. For instance, if we spot something in the newspaper, yesterday I told Fleming that he ought to look for a job at the driving center. I know that they are often looking for new staff, and he could at least try. He likes gardening and cutting grass, and that shows how we help each other. It must be pretty sad to work somewhere where you can't talk to anyone. I wouldn't like to work in such a place. So as you see here, the situation, the workers were made redundant, is a situation where career guidance is often offered, or at least should be made available. But the situation at the factory is at the same time that there's a lot going on among the employees. And that caught my interest during my research on how career guidance can become a meaningful practice in people's everyday life. So what happened at the factory was that I had the opportunity to follow Ulla's work. And Ulla is the career guidance practitioner who was hired by the HR department to help the workers get new jobs. And Ulla was appointed an office in a building separate from the production building. And I did observations and field studies of Ulla's work. And much of the time we sat in the office waiting. So the office was empty, nobody showed up. And by that time, you can see that Ulla has at least two different possibilities for action. She could go to the HR office and say, this doesn't work, they don't need career guidance, they don't want career guidance. Or she could try to change the practice to meet the relevance and the meaning of the workers that were there. Ulla was a very experienced career guidance practitioner, and I expect that she had perhaps predicted that this could happen. She didn't go to the HR office and close down her career guidance offer. She went into the production hall. And here's a picture of Ulla in the red jacket walking around in the factory. So what happened more in detail was that Ulla arrived at the factory. She sets up what is called a guidance corner, which was in the office that she got appointed. And there she had a computer, she had leaflets, she had job advertisements, but nobody showed up. Then she started to walk around in the factory. She actually went into the production hall and stood next to the worker who was working at the production line. And a production line with paint is something that moves fast, and you can't really leave the production line unnoticed. But Ulla could stand next to the worker and talk to him about how the work has changed during the years that he had been there. Most of the workers had been there for approximately 25 years, so they were experienced and they had little experience of other workplaces. So changes then occur. When Ulla had been walking around in the factory talking to several of the workers for a couple of days, the foreman came to Ulla and said, "Do you want to come into our lunchroom? Because in the lunchroom we can talk to you during the breaks, and you can bring your job advertisements and put them on the wall." So they took down pictures of 20 years of fishing trips that they had gone to during their work in the factory and put up the job advertisements. And then what I then observed took place during the lunch breaks was that the workers would gather in the lunchroom and form such a half circle around the guidance wall. And they would talk to each other and also talk to Ulla about what they saw at the wall, and have dialogues like the one I showed to you, where Paul said that they would talk to each other and make suggestions to each other about where to look for jobs. So the physical movement of this career guidance practice actually affected the dialogue. So instead of consisting of individual and private dialogues, it became more shared and collective practice that centered around a guidance wall. And it could no longer insist of the private sphere, so to speak. But it also made something else very obvious to me. When the individual worker left the production line to go to see someone in the office, the individual worker became quite visible. And Ulla, on the other hand, in the office was quite invisible. But this was turned around when it was in the lunchroom. So Ulla was visible as a guest in the lunchroom who came with resources that she could make available to the workers. The worker, on the other hand, became more invisible because he was a part of a safe collective that he knew on a daily basis. And it changed the practice. When I talked to Ulla about this, something else came into the analysis, because Ulla described this as an informal part of guidance. But at the same time, she described it as where guidance would make meaning to the workers. So I was curious about why informal were were pushing the elements of career guidance that has had the most effect, according to Ulla, to the periphery of the guidance practice. Because something that we describe as informal is something that is in the periphery. And I wanted to move that periphery into the central part of career guidance practice. And that is why we developed the model to give career guidance practitioners a language to speak about this important way and this important mode of delivering career guidance. So the result was that career guidance became more collective, and several people were listening in and asking questions at the same time. And this also made Ulla more approachable, and Ulla could from there deliver new activities and also set up individual sessions when needed. So the analysis indicate that the participants, they move career guidance from the private sphere towards a more public sphere, from being organized in the form of individual sessions towards being organized more collectively. And also that the collective forms of the organizations interacts with the concrete places, and that gives new possibilities for participation. So when you have career guidance in a community like the group in the lunchroom, there are other possibilities for participating than in individual sessions. And here I have listed some of them that came out of the research. So you can listen to questions that other people ask, and you can hear the answers that they get. That will get you ideas for your own questions. And these three possibilities for participation actually address the challenge of those who are most in need of guidance not showing up. Because here you get a possibility to get to know what career guidance is about and how you can benefit from it. Other people, like you saw in the quote with Paul, can also offer concrete solutions in relation to the questions that you ask. They can also add perspectives to your perception of the situation. For instance, someone who have known each other for 25 years can encourage and make their observation about your skills and your knowledge and your abilities. You can easily refer to questions and dialogues that you have heard because you have all heard the same things. And you can discuss previous questions with others and together gain new understanding of obstacles and your options in how to maneuver with these obstacles. So the results of the research and also the basis for developing the model, which will be the next part of the presentation, is that when we study career guidance from a participant perspective, its partiality becomes clear. So career guidance is just one practice among other things that takes part in people's everyday lives and affects how they think about themselves in relation to their future and future work. And it also raises questions about how career guidance can become a relevant context for participation in the lives of individuals, because they need this experience of relevance if career guidance are to have an influence on how they participate, but also to have an influence in their lives, which is the goal of career guidance. And thus, the effectiveness of guidance activities then depends on the practitioner's possibilities to reach out and to design meaningful activities. And for this purpose, we developed the model on career guidance in communities. And this is what the model looked like. This is a very interesting picture taken from a précis. That's why it looks like this. But also at this time of the presentation, I thought it would be good if you get a little thing to get you up and out of the chair. So perhaps, you could stretch a little bit and do like this, and then we are ready to do the rest 14 minutes of this presentation. And I know that I might be speaking a little bit fast, so I hope that this presentation will trick your curiosity, and that you will look into papers and even the book on career guidance in communities if you want to know more. So the model is a model for reflexive practice, which means it's a model that helps you as a career guidance practitioner or as someone who manages career guidance to think about how you can develop a practice that is relevant for those that are in your target group. So the first element of the model is creating opportunity, structure, and access. So first you need to identify a community that you want to engage with, make contacts, and establish collaborative structures. So this is what Ulla did actually when she came into the factory. So someone else, the HR department, had identified this community of workers. They had made the contact, and Ulla was about to establish collaborative structures, not just with the HR department, but actually with the workers in the factory. And that's what she's doing when she's moving around in the factory. But if you want to go into, for instance, a school or another factory, and the goal of the practice is not to help redundant workers, it could be to expand the access to continuous professional development, to have low-skilled or unskilled workers take part in training, which is often also a challenge for career guidance to actually be able to communicate this and to get into guidance processes. You need to consider who to contact: colleagues, management, teachers, others. So that's the first element of the model. The second element of the model is when you enter a community and you want to increase your visibility as someone who works with career guidance. How do you do that? Because this visibility as someone who has resources, something to deliver, something to give to this community. And also the visibility is crucial for people to get to know the practitioner and learn what she or he can provide. So it's done in many different ways, but for Ulla in the factory, she did it through her job advertisements and information about courses and training. She also deliberately did it because she was the only woman in the lunchroom, so she became quite visible as someone who wasn't there on a regular basis. But that's something that you need to consider. Now, what took place in the lunchroom was actually also career guidance in communities on the spot. And when you do that, you move away from the idea of career guidance as something that takes place on a one-to-one dialogue. You can look into the skills that are required to practice career guidance in groups, and those are the same skills, but actually When you look at the second line here, listening and showing one's empathy and unconditional positive attention is still the same core skills as we use in individual career guidance sessions. So you participate in that community as a professional with your resources and your skills that you have from other ways of delivering career guidance. And then there's something that is really important if you want to foster more participation among the participants. As career guidance practitioners, we often think that we need to deliver the answer when a question is asked. But here is a possibility of thinking about holding back and taking the initiative to invite others into the dialogue. So instead of just delivering the answer to a question, you can ask if other people share the same thoughts, if they think of the question in different ways, if they have any things that they want to add or might have solutions that the career guidance practitioner didn't think of. So think about how you can involve, or you can simply just listen and then observe who else will jump in on this question. Of course, you need to consider exchanges across individual and community activities. So if you have spoken to someone in an individual session, of course, you need to be aware not to bring that into the collective room. Then on the other hand, if what you speak to someone about is something that you know that the other persons in that practice is also struggling with, please ask the person in the individual session, if I'm in the lunchroom and we get to talk about this topic, would it be okay if I refer to this dialogue that the two of us have had? Because I think that it could be important to others. So instead of thinking as in the individual and the collective as someone that is guarded by confidentiality, you can think about how you can make problems shared, and how you can make people see each other as resources or as someone who are in the same struggles as someone else. Because we know from the research in group guidance that it's quite emancipating and de-individualizing to see and realize that others share the same struggle. And then of course at the bottom here we have the possibility to have one-to-one consultations. So you can suggest that either in the dialogue or later on. And it will probably be relevant to the person who have asked the question. But that person might not have come to see the career guidance practitioner before the collective session. And then of course we need to remember to follow up with accurate information, and that might not be as easy as when you sit with the computer and you can look up something immediately. Then on the other hand, you have here the possibility of actually making a really good connection with those who are to have this information, and you can get back either by email or by text or simply by calling them on the phone and saying, I have looked up this question that you have and here's the information. And in that way you will continue the guidance process, but you will have established the process and this information that you now are to deliver as something meaningful and wanted for that person. So while you're delivering career guidance in communities and having these dialogues, you're at the same time exploring potentials in the guidance situations. So you listen to the problems that they have, you initiate open dialogues, you also examine what characterizes these communities and the challenges that they face, and you can also here discuss possible themes for different types of guidance activities. In the case with the factory and Ulla, what they discussed in the lunchroom was, for instance, how do you make an online CV? And they were very insecure about that. Ulla then set up a workshop and they came to work with the online CV. Others wanted information about specific training, support in writing an application, support in finding new opportunities and relating them to their skills, support in how to handle their age in terms of the online CV and also in terms of the application. So many different themes came up. And Ulla then designed her activities according to these themes, using the words that the workers used in her design, so that the activities became very recognizable to them, and they were perceived as relevant because they came out of the dialogue, they came out as questions they had, as challenges they felt that they faced. If we go back to the empty office, you can easily see that CV workshops, information on training is often something that is, a part of career guidance activities, but they might not be relevant before they have been further sort of connected with the community and the people for whom they are to make a difference. So here is a difference between what we on the distance define as a need for guidance, and what is done here as part of the communities, where we explore the potential that is in the collective and set up and design activities together with them. So Ulla then decided, and that's the next element of the model, on which guidance activities that her offer should contain. So that made her provide different types of activities, and then also, of course, she needs to decide what forms of organization, what methods, and who will she collaborate with. For instance, she would invite a vocational training course, a school, to come and give information together with her in one of the workshops. So she developed, plan, and implement based on her exploration and also on her delivering of career guidance in communities. She decided the order, the content, the materials, the time and place, and how to recruit participants. And here is her possibility of using the language of the workers, perhaps even saying, on that time we had this discussion in the lunchroom, and therefore I come back now with this activity. Of course, there is a very good point in how to create awareness of the activities, but here she's in the workplace, she's connected to the workers, and she's in dialogue with them, which gives her good chances of creating this awareness. And then the final element is documenting and evaluating. So even if this model tries to move a more informal part of career guidance practice into the center, it is equally important to document and evaluate what takes place. So for instance, with the activities in the lunchroom, Ulla could keep a field diary and note down who participated, what was the purpose, and what did she feel was the outcome. If there were to be written evaluations, it's important to ask questions which cover the various aspects and activities of community-based guidance. And it could be questions like, have you listened to someone who have asked the career guidance practitioner questions? Have you listened to dialogues in the lunchroom? Are you aware of activities that are communicated? And so on. And there was an interesting thing that came out of my research, which shows something about how it is likely that even evaluations do not capture this way of delivering guidance. Because I had been in the factory for almost half a year, and I have seen several of the workers talk to Ulla in the lunchroom or individually and take part in activities. So I asked them if they have had career guidance, and then they would say, no, I have never had career guidance, not once in my life. And then later on in the interview, when we came to talk about Ulla's work, they would tell me that, oh, it's so important, the work that Ulla does together with us. And she even shows up even if we do not have an appointment. And what she tells us and the way we can speak to her really helps us in thinking about the next step in our career and working lives. So it might not be that important to the workers what we call this practice. But when we as professionals draw on the knowledge, the research, the different methods, it is really important to think out of the box, out of the office, and to think about how career guidance can reach out and how career guidance can be developed to become a meaningful part of people's lives. Now, if you have enjoyed this presentation, please do not hesitate to send me an email. At the moment, I have 3 copies of this book to share. It's the book on which the model is developed. So it's a book about research on career guidance in communities. You can find me by Googling Rie Thomsen online, and there you can also find the other articles that I have written. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you.